I'm just wrapping up here, and this is just, perhaps you were in a session which showed some of the slides related to the adult learner population in Kentucky, but this is just kind of big picture. Our adult learners that we are really working very diligently to engage in post-secondary education, engage and re-engage. 2/3 of our students of this 1.4 million in Kentucky, that's about 928,000, have not participated in our institutions. Very hard to enroll them for the first time. And then 1/3, about 464,000, we want to return and complete their credentials and degrees. So these are our priority students. Now, what has historically been some of these big barriers to our students coming back? And we know what they are, and that was the priority focus of our sessions today. You know, family obligations, financial barriers, work commitments, and academic support that may be needed. So the work of CPE, you know, the CPE worked with our campus partners to develop the Moving Up strategy that launched in September of 2022, which has been our guide for what work we're doing over the last 2 years. And we even did a refresh of that in February of 24 this year to kind of take stock. Where are we? And kind of what are our priorities moving forward? And where do we really want to double down? And we have some really good energy, we have some really good momentum, and we have some incredible partnerships. So as you can see, the 3 big buckets of our priorities are around increasing access, increasing and improving our institutional innovation, and then reinforcing our partnership areas. The areas that we focused on at this convening did a good job, I think, of covering the bases, you know, and trying to do a little bit of everything. If this is hard to read, I apologize. This is just the 9 topics. So you've been there and done that. But it really did focus on increasing access through basic needs, through, you know, administrative holds and past due balances work, through the parenting student work, which is again going to be delayed, but in that November 13th Basic Needs Community of Practice meeting, and also looking at the onboarding experience of adult learners. So that's all about increasing access. When we think about innovations, we highlighted working with our justice impacted students. We highlighted this credit for prior learning and institutional innovations around credit for prior learning practices, as well as better serving military affiliated students and models from several states, but Indiana being kind of an exemplar. And then when we think about how do we reinforce partnerships? Well, the incredible luncheon panel on the workforce partnerships, as well as institutional partnerships working together to address a critical workforce need and increase on-ramps for adult learners to increase their education. Thinking about partnerships with adult education and really clearly mapping out pathways to post-secondary education for GED students and completers. And then also partnerships with the Department of Corrections as an innovation. So really excited about what we were able to kind of think through today and how I think it really just planted seeds for our future work together. Now, I am going to tell you a little bit about what's next as I get to the end of the session, but I want to take a minute because I did not anticipate this, but Mike Krause in the keynote this morning really talked quite a bit about North Carolina's work with Inside Track. And I promise you, I did not know that that was going to happen. And, and we already had Inside Track kind of set up as an interview that we were going to do at our closing here to kind of learn more about how they go about this whole outreach approach and, you know, kind of where do you start? When you have 1.4 million adults that are not currently enrolled in post-secondary education, but you'd really like them to be, what role can an organization like Inside Track, you know, offer to a state to kind of increase the capacity of our post-secondary institutions to hopefully re-engage and engage for the first time our adult population. So I'm going to bring some of my friends up here, Kai and Jessica, and just have a little bit of a conversation. Let's see. And I will, do you guys have a microphone? Oh. Jessica, could you jump down and grab those mics? Okay. Okay, and we can just start with introductions, so feel free to introduce yourselves.
Great. I guess I'll start. I'm Kai Dreckmeyer from Inside Track. I'm one of the founders and am now focused on development fundraising. We are a nonprofit, but also developing new programs that are innovative and different. And I should note, in about, a week, we will hit our 24-year anniversary of starting Inside Track, and it was a little bit of a different organization, but it's been a while that we've been at this. And before I hand it to Jess, I just want to say thank you, Lily, for a great day. I was so impressed by this, and I think we're going to take away as much or far more than we bring to this. So just want to say great job. Everybody could give you a hand. I think it was great. Impressive.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Hector, Associate Vice President of Partner Success at Inside Track. I've had the pleasure of being with our organization. It'll be 10 years on November 1st. There's a little plug for Kai to get me a present or something. I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, and I've worked in a variety of roles at our organization, primarily focused around large statewide initiatives and managing those partnerships, as well as having the pleasure of being in front of wonderful thought leaders like you all and seeing how we might make an impact together with tackling the challenges of our learners today.
So my first question, as you all participated throughout the day, attended many sessions, and even in one session, I heard somebody directly ask this question. So where should we start in our efforts to support returning or former students, you know? So what do you guys think? Like, what do we do first?
Yeah. I'd say a couple things. Number one, don't get hung up on everything being perfect, just get moving. If you look at former students who have stopped out, no matter the size of your institution, there are a lot of them. And if you could just imagine, for many of them, it's on their mind to come back at some point, but when is a hard thing, and there's always other stuff getting in the way. So getting a prompt from you all is very good. So no need to wait for total perfection. A lot of times you want to design all the systems and we'll launch it in 2 years. I would get moving, because as you start talking to these students, you'll start to see what you need and where you need to run faster. The second piece is probably to start with the data. It's really nice if you're doing anything to have success out of the gates. We have found two really important factors. If you focus on students who already have a good amount of credit who have stopped out, that's a great place for a couple reasons. One, they've already got skin in the game and they're close to finishing. So think about if you are a 2-year program, students with at least 30 credits, and you could do the same with a 4-year, or 30 credits or 60, whatever you want. But also, more recent stop-outs are going to be easier to reach. We certainly should be going back further, but we're finding students who have stopped out in the last year, 2, 3, or 4, far more likely to come back. And it's nice if out of the gates you're just seeing some real success. Because we live in a world of limited resources, that's one of the reasons to consider that. Last couple things, just really think about the experience of these adult learners. And I think this came up a few times. I don't like the expression, good customer service, but just really kindness and warmth and positivity. And so a lot of this means letting them know that there are a lot of people in their shoes. We've sometimes throw around the number 40 million across the country, students with some college, no degree, who haven't finished. I think Ithaca shared it was closer to 37 million right now, but there are a lot of them. They need to know that, and it's very normal. And it's very normal to come back and finish. Last thing is really just this proactive outreach really has to happen. If you're just going to email or just going to send old-style mail, you're just not going to get great results. As Mike mentioned, calling and texting really matters, and we've had great success with texting. I will admit that internally at Inside Track, there's sometimes a debate, because just like your staff, our coaches kind of would rather just be texting, but calling really does work. It just depends. You've got to reach the person, and they've got to know that you're calling, otherwise they will not take the call. It'll go to voicemail every time.
All right. So, we had a lot of topics that were covered today, a lot of sessions. What do you think we might be missing in terms of a focus on returning student needs and adult learners?
And I'm sure Kai probably will echo everything I'm saying around this, but you guys are 100% on the right track. I mean, it is really encouraging to see state resources and personnel coming together in a really intelligent way to tackle this obstacle and these challenges for these learners. But with that said, I think it is important to emphasize the importance of easy and highly accessible point of contact. And that might be a single point of contact, but really having someone that can easily answer questions and solve any issues for those learners. It's not really like, so many services were highlighted today, which I think is great, but it's also a kind of a culture shift, right? Every interaction with these learners, you need to be reinforcing their decision to come back and kind of lifting them up in that, really normalizing their experience. I think Kai kind of mentioned that there, and create that sense of belonging. I think when it comes to some support services, I don't know that there was anything that was missed today. Credit for prior learning, of course, something that was talked about in Matt and Dallas's session that was great this morning. Thinking about childcare and emergency micro grants, especially with basic needs being on the rise for a lot of learners. I don't know, Kai, if you have anything to add around that.
Just that, and I'm glad Mike brought this up because I'd heard the same thing about childcare or childcare centers on campus. Seems like it has so much promise, but even in California where I live, sometimes these centers are getting shut down because they're not used. And he may be onto something saying that it is people, they want their kid at a consistent place. I'm still pretty bullish on the need. My kids are in college now, but the cost of childcare is outrageous for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think that's a policy issue that if we can address, there could be this great synergy. So, thinking of our community colleges in particular, of emphasizing the word community and maybe even having some healthcare options, things to draw the community, whether they are students or not, would be really cool and really smart. And then last point, age 0 to 3 or 0 to 2 and pre-K is emerging as a huge opportunity to advance life outcomes of all sorts, health, intellectual academic development, and economic upward mobility. So I'll just plug for that.
I have a question that's not maybe directly on the paper.
No problem.
So you saw 2/3 of our population of adult learners have no prior college experience, and 1/3 have some college, no degree. So how does an organization like Inside Track support both of those populations? I know as an agnostic, or maybe Mike mentioned with the area code of Murray State. How does that work from both of those different target populations with your outreach approach?
I'll start. It could be in some ways similar, but you want to be specific with any sort of outreach. And we are finding, and it's not just here in Kentucky at all, it's across the country, that many folks are wondering about, is college worth it? It's so expensive. And is it necessary? I see a lot of people working with good jobs and they never went to college. So saying go to college as the main leading message may not be the way to go. But talking about economic upward mobility or really getting a job or a better job does resonate with most people. And the idea that some of the work that is readily available and pays well, particularly a lot of the work that men do, is not something that's easy to do until you're 65, 70. And thinking about the life cycle and where you'll be as you get to be a little bit older, what's going to be a fit for you. And then, final point of really saying, higher ed actually is becoming a very welcoming place. And so to the degree that there is, and I don't like to use the word class, but there are many folks who feel like, yeah, that's a rich people thing, and I'm not doing that. And to say, actually, it's not about that at all. And there are many people like you having a good experience learning and really benefiting. And I would say that message can go with somebody with credit or with no credit at all.
I think I would just add to that is thinking about, the employer connection side of it. Upskilling, reskilling, tapping into that market with employers who have a need, who have jobs that are going unfilled, much like what we heard over the lunch session. So I think leaning into that from either a statewide perspective or a regional perspective can help tap into that market.
So then you kind of just touched on the keys to success of these outreach programs. Is there anything else related to the messaging that you think is really incredible to underscore?
I think, well,
Go ahead.
you may go ahead. Okay.
I talk too much, clearly. Go ahead.
He's the king of one last thing. But I think there are a lot of keys, I think, to success when you think about operationally. I'm in the little notes. I just dropped them, didn't I? I'm going to get them right here. I highlighted 3. So if we're thinking about institutions trying to think about how we're going to operationally implement this in targeting these learners, is thinking about the targeted messaging. And Mike touched on a lot of these, I think, in his session this morning with North Carolina Reconnect. But thinking about the messaging, looking at the credit hours, right? Do we have some students that are really close to getting that credential or that degree? Is there a particular program, maybe in need of an employer, that we want to highlight to target that messaging around, as well as that time away? And I think you referenced that too. Where can you get the greatest impact on getting those learners back based on how long they've been out of school? Along with that, dedicated staff really focused and having some accountability and measurement around engaging those learners. This really can't be something that's layered onto an existing full-time role, right? When you're outreaching these learners, it needs to be, that's the role of that. And I think that's some ways where we kind of come in on that front end to help sometimes for partners. And then Mike kind of laid this out in his timeline this morning. It was like the consideration around the timing, really having an understanding around what are those deadlines, what makes sense for that learner, and planning and coming back to school and kind of using that as your measurements for success.
And I'll just add on to that quickly that it's very easy launching something like this to pile it on to other work. And because this outreach to brand new, never before students or former students is hard, it feels like sales, it can feel like cold calling, people don't want to do it. And if they've got other responsibilities, they'll focus on those. And the work kind of doesn't happen. So some level of dedication is just
Well, and I think there's also a bandwidth challenge too for a lot. I mean, I was talking to one of our private schools in Ohio, and they have their person in HR who is outreaching students, right? They just don't have the bandwidth to support the students, let alone that are there, let alone those that have stopped out or dropped out.
And if so long as the messaging is not shaming or harassing, you probably can reach out a lot more than you think, because the messages just don't even get through often. For one reason or another, folks just delete them. With text, I believe you need to create the option to opt out for sure, but I would not, you can easily misestimate how much you can reach out. I'm finding in general, to get the message through to a friend or colleague, sometimes you need to say it or write it 7 times. So that's something to consider.
Thank you. And it sounds like you've actually gained some learnings from your outreach to prospective students that can be applied to help support the success of existing and enrolled students. So are there any particular areas that you would emphasize?
Yeah, I'll just mention that, it's easy to understand the challenges that what we call adult learners face. The reality is that many of our traditional 18, 19-year-olds got to work, they might have a kid, they're dealing with some of the same challenges, and they will benefit from the flexibility or support that starts to get layered in as we think about working parents, adult learners. So that's probably a big thing. The other piece that we've just seen as we're talking with students about, when you also are outreaching, you might ask, hey, in a very supportive way, in your view, why did you stop out? What caused the challenge or the need to take a break? What's changed now? What barriers still remain? And as you're discussing that, we try to give the feedback that we're learning to the colleges, and they, like 9 times out of 10, they're like, gosh, we have support for that. The students just don't know. We've got support for basic needs. There's ways we can do this. And so that's one thing. As I mentioned, the message is not always getting through about the great resources you have, and we should never underestimate that. We've got to advertise it, push it out every different way. Also, in Cala, I should never throw an institution or state under the bus, but I live in California, and everybody loves to beat on California anyway, but we're doing a big project there, and I've been kind of shocked how many students are close to graduating, or they have 60 credits at a community college or more, or 120 at a CSU or more, and they still haven't finished because they need some courses. They didn't take the right ones. And so we're now getting the colleges to do these degree audits. This project, or the project California Reconnect, really came out of IHEPS. That's the Institute for Higher Education Policy, did something called Degrees When Due, which was really about looking at the data, how close are folks, let's do these large mass degree audits. I would say you all could start doing that now, and you may have a little twinge of embarrassment, like, wow, how do we not see this student? You may confer some degrees based on just looking at the list you generate. So also, we've had some students we brought back many places where they just need a few courses and the courses aren't available, especially if it is a smaller rural community college district or site and they don't have much online, and that is solvable also at the state level, so that would be a good thing to watch out for. My gut is you all have fixed that here, but anyway, the issue exists back home for me.
Well, I really appreciate you both. Are there any last thoughts or recommendations you wanted to share?
I would just, again, highlight, I think that lunch session today around the healthcare, and I think more and more seeing states lean into those cross-sector partnerships where it's not the silos, right? It's not, it's the educators and the employers sitting in a room talking together and saying, how can we address this one employment gap that we have in our segment of where we live, but also two, the education gaps that we have.
And when, I think her name is Stephanie McCombs, was up here with that group, HCMC, I think they're called, she teared up a little bit. Take that home and remember, like, that is the meaningful thing. These are folks where we are really changing lives, and it is not easy. If you've got a kid at home and you got to work and you're wondering how you're going to pay for groceries, it is life-changing to suddenly be making, another $100, $150, $200 a week, is significant. So that is something to share with your teams because it really ignites the passion around the work that we all do that is so important. So I would emphasize that. And just another thing to remember is that, there's a temptation to talk about industry connections, employer connections, employment pathways. That's emerging as the most important thing, integrating work and learning. And I just think we are going to see, I think we're often motivated by what's a step or two away, right? The thing that's right before us, it's just like, oh God, I gotta just get this done. But as you're thinking about your future and employment and making more money, it's a major motivator. Suddenly, not just getting through the course and getting a good grade, but learning the material, becoming a better writer, a better speaker, a more critical thinker, it takes on meaning as you're thinking about, I'm gonna have to get out there and compete and really do my thing in a job. Super motivating. So let's think about that too, of how we integrate those things. I do have one last thing.
Absolutely, Kai.
And that is the professionalization of advising and holistic advising on campuses. We're doing a lot of this outreach. We also do some advising, but a lot of that, once students are in, it should sit on the campus, it should be there. And one of the things we can do is elevate that role with more training and also redefine the role as a dual role. Your job as an advisor should be to help advance students one by one, of course, that everybody knows that. The secondary role which is emerging is, as a researcher, you should be listening, watching, and witnessing the student experience and take that back to the administration and say, look, we're seeing a pattern here. I talked to 30 students this week who had this challenge. It's kind of an institutional challenge so that we can fix ourselves and get better and better. So see advising and these touch points with students as a chance for continuous improvement of the college or university.
Thank you. I love that final thought. I know in the leadership exchange, we had a whole workshop on solve for one, change for many. And kind of, it's just that exact same concept. So thank you both so much.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I just want to share a few final thoughts. A lot of the engagement that we talked about today, we continue these conversations on a monthly basis. And the conversations are open to all of our stakeholders in Kentucky. So we have our events calendar live and updated regularly on the collaborative's website, kystudentsuccess.org, and we also post all of our meetings on the Impact Exchange, which is this lovely QR code here on your name badge, et cetera. So you can see any previous meetings, but also future meetings. You can jump in, get all the resources, et cetera. We would love for you to join us in adult attainment, student basic needs, mental health, gateway core success. All of these are active communities of practice with your peers talking about issues that are currently, hot topics for you. And then I also wanted to let you know that, I think that Dr. Thompson said at the beginning, this is all a call to action. So what we did today was we really highlighted a lot of our ongoing work related to this strategy. And so we have more things that are also kind of in motion and continuing their momentum. So for one, if you were able to sit in on Dallas and Matt's Credit for Prior Learning workshop or presentation, they shared some information about an invitation to participate in a kind of some individual coaching, self-assessment, and process improvement related to your institution's credit for prior learning process. So there will be information posted on the Impact Exchange. You can also reach out to Dallas or Matt for more questions if you weren't able to sit in on that session. But that is going to be an incredible opportunity, and we'll be able to work with 2 institutions this spring, but I know that that is going to be something where we'll have more opportunities in the future. Even though we weren't able to offer the child care session today, that is work that's funded by the ECMC Foundation. So we have at least 2.5 years of our child care work that we'll be doing in Kentucky. And so one of the pieces of that is establishing a child care solutions network that is very specific to increasing access to child care for parenting students. So it is from the post-secondary lens. And there is a lot of work happening around the child care space, but it doesn't often intersect with our post-secondary students. And so that is where we want to make sure that that conversation is inclusive of adult learners in Kentucky. So stay tuned because that is going to include a partner network as well as parenting student voice research that will be led by our faculty partners here in Kentucky. So we'll have an RFP out for faculty that might be interested in that research, and also we'll have some grant-making dollars from our ECMC Foundation to be able to share with our partners that have some innovative solutions. We are excited, the Indiana Collegiate Purple Star model that was shared with us, we're interested in having an exploratory conversation with our campus partners to learn what next steps might be here in Kentucky to better support our military-affiliated students. And then also, I believe that Dr. Gregory was able to share the partnership with the collaborative in this final session here today. We're really excited to continue to explore what that professional development partnership looks like between the adult education instructors and our Gateway Core Success or our co-requisite instructors here in Kentucky. So stay tuned for that professional development opportunity because that'll be open to our faculty partners that teach co-requisite courses. All right, and then my last announcement is if you haven't already, save the date. The 2025 Student Success Summit will be Feb 10 and 11 this coming year. Registration opens tomorrow or maybe today, but we have to make sure the website is updated, so definitely tomorrow. And early bird is going to be through December 1. So if you know that you're planning to come, it'll be in Lexington. We hope that you can join us. And again, it's really a fantastic opportunity to kind of connect a lot on these strategic priorities of CPE. All right, well, I really appreciate all of you and look forward to continuing our work together. Safe travels.